The subcommittee will come to order. We meet today pursuant to notice to mark up the ranking member's bipartisan resolution aimed at securing the return of Robert Levinson, the longest-held United States hostage in our nation's history. And so, as your offices were previously notified, it is the intent of the chair to consider the following items en bloc, which members have before them. House Resolution 148, calling on the government of Iran to fulfill its repeated promises of assistance in the case of Robert Levinson, and Ros-Lehtinen Deutsch Amendment 31 in the nature of a substitute to House Resolution 435. Without objection, these items are considered as read and will be considered en bloc. After I make some opening remarks and the ranking member speaks, we will be glad to recognize any other member seeking recognition. And without objection, all members may have 5 days to submit statements for the record on today's business. Chair recognizes herself. First, I'd like to welcome Christine, Robert Levinson's wife, and their son Dan in the audience, as well as, I don't know if your sister-in-law Susie, who's not able to make it. I wish I could say that it's a pleasure to see you today, but unfortunately seeing you here at this markup means that it is another 2 birthdays and another 2 anniversaries that you have missed with Bob. For 3,261 days, your family has had to cope with not knowing where he is or even how he is. But just know that we will not give up the fight to bring Bob home to you and all of his loved ones and friends, and we will continue to demand that Iran honor its commitment, and we will continue to press the administration to help bring Bob home. We will continue to raise this issue ourselves, which is why I'm pleased to join the leader in this cause, Ted Deutsch, in introducing this resolution here before us today yet again. As South Florida residents, you couldn't have asked for a better and more determined representative for your cause than Ted Deutsch. I've seen how important Bob is to Ted. His #1 goal is reuniting him with you, the members of his family. I can only say that we all support Ted in his efforts. We will continue to work with Mr. Deutsch in his fight for your family. And because it is an issue that's so dear to Ted, I want to yield the balance of my time to give Ted the opportunity to speak as long as he wants.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. I'd like to begin by thanking you for your vigorous commitment to bringing awareness to Bob Levinson's case, always pushing for Bob's return. And I want to thank the many members of the subcommittee who have co-sponsored this resolution. I'd also like to welcome Christine and Dan to our markup today. Last month, we received word that our government negotiated for the release of 4 Americans imprisoned in Iran. It was welcome news. These are Americans who were wrongfully held, and the move brought comfort to the families, corrected an injustice, and made very clear that the United States does not forget about its own people. Over the years, I've worked closely with Congressman Kildee, Congressman Huffman, and Congressman Labrador to continue to raise Bob's case as well as those of Amir Hekmati, Saeed Abedini, and Jason Rezaian. And I'm so pleased that each of their constituents has returned home to the United States to be with their family and their friends. Their nightmares are over. Unfortunately, this is not the case for the Levinsons. For Bob, now the longest-held civilian hostage in our history, and for his family, this nightmare continues. March 9th will mark 9 years since Bob disappeared on Iran's Kish Island. That's 9 years of birthdays with his 7 children, anniversaries with his wife Christine, weddings, the births of 3 of his 4 grandchildren, and many other important milestones that should have been joyous occasions for the Levinsons that should have been celebrated together as a family and should have created happy memories that one carries with them for their entire life. Today, it is an honor to have Bob's wife Christine and his eldest son Dan here. This is a family who for 9 years has never given up and has worked tirelessly to bring their husband and father home. Your family deserves to feel the same elation and relief as the families of those other Americans who were released, and rest assured, we will not give up until Bob is returned. Bob dedicated his life to serving this country, spending 28 years with the FBI, and earlier with the DEA. Bob loves this country dearly, and now this country must come through for Bob. There have been moments of optimism over the years. The Levinson family has received proof of life in the form of pictures and video. We know that throughout the course of nuclear negotiations with Iran, Secretary Kerry, Undersecretary Sherman, and others raised Bob's case at every single meeting. But that's not enough. Whatever information Iran has about Bob needs to be provided now so that Bob can be brought home. The resolution before us today calls on Iran to follow through on its repeated promises of assisting the United States in locating Bob. I'm proud to introduce this resolution with my colleague and good friend, Chairman Ros-Lehtinen, as well as our fellow Floridians, Congressman Diaz-Balart and Congresswoman Wasserman Schultz. The resolution recognizes that despite our many disagreements with Iran, our government and those of our partners and allies must continue to press Iran for information about Bob at every opportunity. Both President Obama and Secretary Kerry have repeatedly expressed their commitment to securing Bob's release. After the release of the other Americans, President Obama stated on national television that, and I quote, "Iran has agreed to deepen our coordination as we work to locate Robert Levinson, missing from Iran for more than 8 years. Even as we rejoice in the safe return for others, we will never forget about Bob. Each and every day, and especially today, our hearts are with the Levinson family. We will not rest until their family is whole again." And close quote. Today, Iran seeks to be part of the international community. But let us make no mistake, a country that sponsors terrorism, that threatens to wipe other countries off the map, and that holds innocent Americans hostage will not be welcomed into the community of responsible nations. For anyone who's watching this markup online, for anyone in the audience, I encourage you to tweet about Bob Levinson using the hashtag #WhatAboutBob. We've got to keep talking about this case. We've got to raise the level of awareness, and we must encourage our government and the governments of our allies and anyone who can be helpful to continue to work tirelessly to find Bob and to bring him home. Christine and Dan, please know that the United States Congress stands with you. We will not forget about Bob. I thank my colleagues for the support of this very important resolution today, and I yield back.
Thank you so much, Mr. Deutsch. As always, when you speak about this case, you do it in such an eloquent manner. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us. Mr. Shabbat is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to commend you for bringing this important, timely legislation before the subcommittee today, and I admire your dedication and Mr. Deutsch's dedication in particular, and other members of this committee who have displayed basically being relentless about bringing to light what happened and where Robert Levinson is, and to bring him home to his family, as you've mentioned, is here today. And as has been mentioned, Mr. Levinson is now the longest held U.S. civilian in American history, and Iranian officials must live up to their commitments to work through the case and release the results of the investigation into Mr. Levinson's disappearance to the United States. While I recognize that U.S. officials have repeatedly called for the safe return of Mr. Levinson and requested Iranian assistance to help a fellow American citizen, the administration and our allies must do more. So I join with both Chair Ros-Lehtinen and Mr. Deutsch in urging the President and our allies to continue pressing Iran on the case of Robert Levinson at every opportunity, despite our many unresolved differences. I urge my colleagues to support the legislation. I yield back my time.
Thank you, Mr. Shabbat. Mr. Connolly is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Let me first of all express my deep concern to the Levinson family who are here today, and to thank my colleague, Mr. Deutsch, especially, and you, Madam Chairman, for keeping this issue at the forefront of our relationship, evolving as it is, with Iran. It is never okay for a U.S. citizen to be detained without charge, without explanation. Mr. Levinson is the longest held American civilian in our nation's history. Accountability is important. So if Iran wants to take its place in the family of nations, if it wants to end its own self-inflicted isolation, it must account for Bob Levinson. Thank you both for your leadership.
Thank you, Mr. Connolly. Mr. Zeldin.
I thank the chairwoman and ranking member for your leadership to try to not only get more information on Mr. Levinson, but to hopefully eventually be able to bring him home. I had the pleasure of speaking with the family of Mr. Levinson before the start of today's markup, and it's clear that they are as determined as ever to get answers that questions left long overdue. Just last week, Congressman Mike Pompeo, Frank Lobiondo, and I went to the Iranian interest section here in Washington, D.C. to file visa applications. We sent a letter to the Ayatollah. Part of that request is to get more information on Mr. Levinson's whereabouts. Hopefully we'll have a positive response, and I just want to be part of working with the chairwoman and the ranking member to hopefully bring Mr. Levinson home. I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Zeldin. Mr. Meadows?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I want to not only voice my support, but certainly redouble our efforts to continue to keep this particular issue that you and our good friend, Mr. Deutsch, continues to raise on a regular basis. Fundamentally, that if we allow the American people to believe that we're going to tolerate a regime that not only has unbelievable humanitarian atrocities that continue to get leveled on an almost daily basis, but that we're going to tolerate it as an American people, it sends the wrong message. And so I just want to thank you for your leadership, thank Mr. Deutsch for his continued involvement on behalf of his constituency, and will all of us join together in a bipartisan way to support this effort. Yield back.
Thank you, sir. Does any other member seek recognition on this measure? Hearing no further requests for recognition, the question occurs on adopting the items under consideration en bloc. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the en bloc items are approved. Without objection, House Resolution 148, as amended, will be reported to the full committee in the form of a single amendment in the nature of a substitute, and staff is directed to make any technical and conforming changes. I want to thank all of the members and staff for their assistance and cooperation that went in today's important markup. And we will move on to regular order of our subcommittee. And we want to once again thank the Levinson family for appearing before us. Thank you very much.